Hello guys, welcome to our Facebook Live. It's Friday lunchtime here in the UK, Friday morning on Pacific and Eastern time as well, I think. It's super early, so if you're on Pacific, well done. It's really early, so thanks for joining us. And it's just getting added into the chat. He's in another
Hello.
strange place this week. There he is. As always, do say hello in the comments. Just pop us a hello message and we will give you a shout out. Thanks very much for joining us. Just drop us a little comment. Hi, Mel. John said he's going to watch this later, but he wants a shout out. Shout out! That's to John. So do say hello. We'd love to say hello back to you. Raphael, happy Friday to you too, dude. Thanks very much for coming on. Ant's either frozen in time as a person or just his connection, but he's in a cafe in Manchester today. Thanks everyone for coming along. Today we're going to talk about a couple of things. And if I move around a lot, I apologise. Which I'm loving, but when it comes to Friday, it does get a little bit tiring on your feet. So I apologise if that's what it gets like. And it's just dropped connection again, so he will be back. I do apologise about our connection issues. We are working hard to fix a new sort of technology that we can use so that these are a little bit easier to watch. So today, what we're going to talk about, we're going to cover a few things. So each week in this, we try to cover a couple of things. One is what we've done this week, or a big thing that's happened for us, so we can talk about that experience and hopefully you can learn from that experience. Our second thing is something that's happened in podcasting news. We always talk about something new, something that's come up, and something that hopefully that will help you use to grow your podcast. We'll take a question from the group. So this podcast is brought to you from PodTips, the podcasting community. So we take a question that's been talked about a lot in there, or a theme of questions, and discover some solutions to those, or discuss that. And then we'll pick a post of the week from that group. Just a bit of fun at the end. I'm trying to get Ant back in on the call. If you are watching, please do drop a little message, say hello. And if you have any questions at all, it doesn't matter if it's about what we're talking about today, just drop a question in the comments and we'll address it at any time during this. So just pop a question in the comments there. I'm getting loads of thumbs up and hearts from Ant, which means he is connected. And I've sent you an invitation, so if you just try and join if you can. I'll see if I can bring you on camera. Just adding him in now. Everyone that's watching, thank you very much. Robert, thanks for joining us again. Justin, thanks for joining us. Mel, hi. Raphael, hi. John, hi. There he is with his posh coffee.
Yeah, I'm afraid the Wi-Fi wasn't vegan. So
Oh, right, yeah. Then. I was just saying what we're going to chat about, but also saying that people should just drop a question in the comments at any point, even if it's not about what we're talking about. We'd love to.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's the best thing to do, seeing as my Google's not working.
I've got your back. It's fine. It's fine. I've just had a weird
thing
pop up.
So that's all right. It happens at your age. Don't worry about it. But that's a completely different Facebook Live. Okay, so yes, so shall we get started?
Why not? Let's go. Shall we crack straight in with our first topic? So it's what we've done this week, really.
Yeah, but are we going to talk about what you did or what you didn't do yesterday?
We can talk about that. I was going to talk about Zoom, but what I didn't do yesterday, which helped me calm down a little bit, was I was using Adobe Audition. Fantastic bit of software, and it's normally fantastic at backing up when you forget to save and then it crashes. Unfortunately, yesterday it wasn't very good at that. I didn't save and it crashed, and I lost like 2 hours worth of editing. So I had a bit of a meltdown, and but it was fine. It's fine.
And it's something anybody who's ever done any amount of editing, or even if you've done, going further back, if you've only ever done Word documents, I'm sure there's been plenty of people who 5 or 6 years ago would have been typing something and the computer crashed and they've lost, sometimes, a whole day's worth of work, and it's very frustrating. And, it's something that is said a million times to you, backup. And yet I think we've become blasé about it now because of things like auto backup and the cloud. We don't, but it's important to have that. And I think as well, if you're doing an interview with somebody, it's not just in editing. It's really good if you can to record on a second source, because if you think about how difficult it is to, even if it's somebody that's not high profile, how difficult it is just to fit your timetables together so you can be online at the same time like we are now, or in the same room at the same place. Now, that person, that might be the only time that you get that person to interview them. And if, for example, you've forgotten to charge your portable recorder, or you've run out of memory on your iPhone, and halfway through the interview it
Yeah.
stops, you know, unless, and it's possible because you're so engaged in the interview you don't realise, and then you leave. And I've done it myself. I've done interviews where I've set up for somebody and it wasn't even my show, which is even worse. And I was producing it for somebody. I set everything up ready to record. Came back an hour later, caught the last 15 minutes and talking. It was amazing. And as I'm just checking the recorder, I look down and the play pause button is flashing. Because on this recorder, I'd hit record, but then you have to hit the play to actually record. And I was so, distraught by it. So if you can, it's always good just to have a second source set there, even if the quality's not going to be good. It's just then something that you can pull back on, and you can reflect on it and say, at this point we had a catastrophic failure, so we went to the backup. The quality's not as good, but please listen because there's some great value in there as well.
And that's a really good point because we're going to.
One other way of doing that is if you're.
Go on.
Oh, go. One of the way of doing that is when you're doing some of those interviews, a bit like we're doing now, is if you both record on both sides. That's another way of backing it up as well. So, which brings us nicely onto this thing that we discovered.
Well, that's the thing. Just before we jump to that, it's a really good sort of practice, and it's used a lot in radio interviews in that they will have a recording solution. So they'll use one of the things we're going to talk about, whether it's Zencaster, CleanFeed, Zoom, whatever. But they'll also ask the people, they'll normally call them via the internet, or if not on a landline, and then they'll ask the person that's on the other end of the interview, do you have a smartphone? Yeah. Would you just mind hitting record on the recording app and putting it on the desk in front of you? Just as a backup. It's a really good backup to try and get people to use. And sometimes you find that's better quality if your internet connection breaks down or if your business partner's eating whilst he's meant to be talking. But it does lead.
The more I talk, the less I eat.
I like it the other way around. The thing we're going to talk about today, though, is that we started using Zoom, which kind of we've known about for a long time. Loads of people use it for chatting to each other online. Loads of businesses use it for webinars and conference calls. Someone in the group this week, I can't remember their name, but said they'd just ditched everything else and fallen in love with Zoom. And it led me to think, you know what, let's just give it a go. And the reason that we weren't before is that we thought it had a really sort of expensive price tag. But shock horror, it actually doesn't. For just doing interviews or doing things like this and recording the audio, you can do it for free. There's a free platform on it. And that's the thing that caught us, is that recording the audio is so simple and such good quality. So we were doing an interview with Mark Asquith from Podcast Websites a couple of weeks ago, and we were on his Zoom room or Zoom conference call room, and he said, oh yeah, let me just record this answer. Clicked, said the answer, clicked, and there was that bit just cut up nicely. And what I also was then thinking, oh, well, that actually had us both on the audio. So when we went into it this week, we had a look, and you can actually, in the settings, select an option that records all the different channels on different pieces of audio. So, for example, if I hit record now, whenever Ant spoke or I spoke, it would be on different audio tracks, and it even cuts them up and names them. So it's like, Chris Huskins Zoom file, Ant McGinley Zoom file, and it's so nicely done that we should sort of fallen in love with it.
Yeah. Yeah, and what I particularly like about that is I like to take it afterwards and just delete the Chris file and then just listen back to everything that I've said.
That sounds about right. Just whilst there's a natural gap, hello to...
Does it capture video as well?
It does, yes. Yeah, just a quick hello to Kalol, Jim, which Sean, they've all said hello. Yeah, it does. It records the video.
Which is great, because all you need to do then is, while you're doing that interview with someone, you capture, take a little section of that video, just them saying a nice little soundbite bit, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, whatever. And then that instantly is a great little video promo for you to share on your social media to pull people in, because they go, I know that guy, or I don't know who that is, but what she's saying is really interesting.
Absolutely. It's a perfect little promo. That would be absolutely perfect. I'll just double check that they're all right with that, especially if they're interviewing them and they're in their pants or something. Who's that?
I have no idea, but I didn't think there was any space between me and the wall.
Apparently there is. I like the fact that whenever we do these Facebook Lives, your end has someone featured in it. Like a couple of weeks ago, there was the train conductor. Now there's a random lady in a purple jumper. I think we just get them involved, get them in.
Yeah, it's just... Yeah, I still haven't told them that we're live to the world. Otherwise, I might have to fork out more for the extras. Hello, Steve, who's a drummer that I know from way back, and he's watching. He's got the amusing picture of him with the Tower of Pisa.
If you do have a question as we're going along, do just pop a comment. If you're watching and you haven't said hello already, just pop a hello in there. Raphael says you never know who's going to do a cameo. Fantastic. Hello to Georgie as well. Georgie, is that right?
Yeah, Georgie from
Amazing.
Georgia. So when I was out at the Gem Fest last year, the world's longest festival. It goes on for a whole month in Georgia, and I was out there while you were
Yeah,
working in the
thanks for that.
office. Hi, Nate, as well.
So, moving on to what's new in the news for podcasting. I got invited to use a beta of an app, and I'll hold my hands up. I completely forgot about it. It got lost in my inbox, but it actually launched this week, and it's actually a discoverability app. And I think that podcasting's had a problem for ages in that... Should we just let her pass?
That's actually a him.
Sorry. Him. Sorry, my bad. I'm very sorry. Completely thrown me off. So it was podcasting's had a discoverability problem for as long as it's been around, really. I mean,
right. So, just for English, what does that?
It means just people struggle to find them. They can't listen to it as easy as just sticking on the radio or just putting a telly on. And it's a thing that, say, Netflix and Amazon Prime defeated that in television. They haven't had a problem with it. They've moved past that point. And podcasting is getting there. So smart speakers are going to be a massive part of that. The fact that they're built into cars in most places now is going to be a big fix to that. But these little apps that keep popping up are actually quite a good fix for it too. Can you tell that person to shut up, please? So the app that just launched is called Tackta. So it's spelled Tackta, and it is drastically loud. Sorry, everyone who's watching, we're having a bit of a noisy cafe issue there.
Yeah, I do apologise. It was literally I was the only person in here when we started, and then obviously the popularity of the show has grown so much. Everybody's arrived.
Yeah, that's it.
Plus, as well, that chap that walked past me looks a bit like Paul McCartney.
And not a lady, like I thought. So the app is Tackta, right? So it's a discoverability app, and it really helps you if you are. And we've seen a lot of posts in the group saying, "Oh, I've run out of this kind of podcast to listen to. I'm interested in this. Can anyone suggest this kind of podcast?" And that's what this app does. So you go in and you scroll through, and you go, "Oh, football podcast or startup podcast." You click it, and you can add that to your feed, and then like an old-fashioned sort of radio dial, it moves around and then goes, here's 20 football podcasts, or here's 20 startup podcasts, whatever. Now, this is really good if you're looking for new podcasts, but what I would say is it's also really good if you're trying to get your podcast discovered a bit more. So I'd go and look for these apps and make sure that your podcast is listed on there. And honestly, it's so new that I don't know how they're listed, if they're all just pulled across or if you need to apply. But it's something we'll be doing this afternoon, is making sure all our podcasts are on these apps.
Yeah, I think so. Traditionally, when people are trying to find a new podcast, it's just a case of either going directly to a name or to a link that they've had, or you then go into somewhere like Apple Podcasts, and it's like literally needle in a haystack. It's potluck at what's going to come up, or you go to the charts, and the charts don't necessarily reflect what is really good. It's just what has had a lot of downloads. And as we know from a lot of things, just because a lot of people have done it does not mean it's a good thing. As example, the meeting of Oasis, the Tory party.
The list could go on and on. There's a couple that have launched like this. I like Tackta. It's new and it's quite fresh. It has sort of lower down podcasts. It's not lower down, more indie podcasts on there. But there are other apps. So there's the social media podcast apps that are launched. So I don't know if you've used Chorus, but that was kind of a social media space. So it's kind of like a Facebook, if you like, but what you write about is podcasts. So you go, I listened to this excellent episode of this podcast this week. Check it out. And it's just a lot of people, and you make friends and connects there. So that's another one as well. Chorus is a really good app for that.
just on a personal level, like when you come to me and you say you've got to check this podcast out, how are you finding these things out? What's the, obviously there's things you come to me and you go, I heard this is brilliant. Don't bother listening to that. It's awful. Is that from you? Are you just like day by day actively looking, or is it just stuff's coming to you and popping into your
It's a
face?
bit of all of it, really. I mean, I'm obviously active in these apps, otherwise I wouldn't be talking about them. But I'm actually large parts of communities. So if I'm interested in something, I'm probably part of a group on Facebook or a group on Reddit or on LinkedIn, and that's where I pick up those recommendations.
But then I think isn't there a danger as well of like I've got this thing right now with box sets. You know, there's so many shows to watch. Like I still haven't watched Breaking Bad, which a lot of people are jealous about because like it's so good when you get to. I've not watched Stranger Things. I've not watched Breaking Bad, and part of me is like, well, that's good because I've got like all this time. I've not watched The
No,
Sopranos. You know, so people have sent me these things,
they
and
all
I've got some
die.
of
It's
these,
fine.
and I could go and watch them all. um, but the thing is, I think you just can't, it almost becomes like stressful. You have this list of things that you're supposed to have watched that you're not got to, and I think that's the danger with podcasting as well. In that literally, you only have so much time. Although you're listening rather than watching, there's only so much time in your day, in your week when you can listen. So for most people, that's going to be commuting in the car or on the bus or on the train, maybe while they're cycling. And then if you've got a job which means you don't have to interact with people, so that could be maybe you're working in a warehouse or you're on a computer all day just coding, then you can obviously get through a lot more.
Yeah.
But for people that are in jobs where you're working with the public or where you're a teacher, that's taken out. When you go out in the evening and have dinner with your family and friends, you can't really. So there's only a small window you can actually listen into. So I suppose for me the thing is like I want it to be that anything that I listen to, I don't want to feel like when you go to the cinema and you come out and you go, that was a waste of a tenner. I'm not getting those 2 hours
Yeah.
back. Yeah, I don't want that to happen. But I suppose as well, if it can happen in a Hollywood produced film, it can happen in something that hasn't had the same level of investment in
Yeah,
it.
and I think that's where people talking about
Yes, Bill.
podcasts is the cool thing. I mean, it's the same with everything. Though it's the same with the TV shows you just mentioned. Not everyone loves Breaking Bad. Most people do, but it's the same with podcasts. You've got different interests, and so discoverability apps are quite nice in that you can go and look in your specific interest area. But there is that whole thing of you're probably going to listen to the first 30 seconds of a few of them and go, nah, that's not for me. Nah, that's not for me. I know I was doing it with a particular niche podcast yesterday. So yeah, I mean, those two apps, if you do want to check them out, Tackta, Tackta, or Chorus, like a chorus of singers. A couple of hellos. Hello, Mark, Ed, Peter, Emma, Eric, Danny. What's up, boys? Hi, Danny. Mel. Says, OMG, you've not seen Stranger Things.
No, I'm such a philistine.
Terrible person. Hi, Linda. Hi, Marcus, Daniel,
Just on the
Robert,
yeah,
Dan, loads of people.
love Linda, all our friends. Discoverability, just on that as well. If you think about it, is there's no point being discovered by people who aren't going to like what you're doing.
Absolutely.
So, for example, if you do a ballet podcast, right, and your podcast is all about ballet, I'm really pleased for you. And this is something that John Lee Dumas uses as an example as well. He says, I'm really pleased for you and I'll support you, but I'm never going to listen to it because it's not my thing. I don't understand it. I don't want to. Those kind of things. If you do something that I'm kind of got a passing interest in or used to be into, like I used to be a huge Formula One fan, I'll gladly listen to that and re-educate myself and get into it. But the people that you want are the ones that are really like bought into what you're doing. So I'd say if you want to help your podcast be discovered, find the community that's your podcast is around, that is around that subject, and be present in it. So go to the events, if it's comics, make sure you're at comic cons. I'm not saying necessarily get out a stand, but like go there and meet people and talk to people and tell them about what you're doing. If you're into Irish dancing, be at an Irish dancing class, be at Irish dancing events, and talk to people, meet people, share them, interview people. And we found this the other day. We recorded very glamorously. We recorded an episode of PodTips in a Weatherspoons,
Hey, lads.
we noticed it just we just had this wonderful moment of like, I've never had my table cleared so many times and so promptly and quickly, because every single member of staff came over because they saw the microphones, they saw the recording equipment, they were like, what's this? It's exciting, something's going on. And
I didn't know 30 people
just
worked
that
at
little thing.
Wetherspoons.
But there is that thing of like, you don't have to have like hired a stand at an event. You can just turn up and just have that, and people are drawn to you because people see that and they go, what's this? And that naturally creates a buzz, and you're going to get more chance of somebody listening to your show if they come up to you and say, what are you doing, rather than if you thrust into them a business card or a flyer.
Yeah.
Now that can be effective as well, but in our experience, that actual engagement, that conversation, when people come to you, that is going to be more and more effective.
Absolutely. And it kind of ties what you were saying that John says, in the, that's interesting, but it's not my interest, so I'm not going to listen. That's why we have that rule in PodTips, and so many podcasting communities have that rule of don't just put a link to your podcast in there loads, because in actual fact, if you're doing a ballet podcast, as you said, and you just post it in a podcasters group, well, then not many podcasters do ballet, and they're not that many people are going to go, oh, actually, I'll click that. You're more off, and you're more beneficial to go and find some ballet groups and have real conversations with people in there. And then if a topic comes up that crosses over, then go, actually, I did an episode on that. Do you want to check it out?
What we have in common here is we're all podcasters, and we have that, and so we're interested in learning about the technical side of it, the equipment, the techniques of recording things, interviews, editing, all those kinds of things, and we can share in that. But once it gets into the ins and outs, like Helen's just joined in, she's watching, used to do radio with Helen. She hates football, and so I doubt she's ever listened to my football podcast. But that's fine, because this is not what it's about. It's you kind of like how you've just got to focus on your audience and get the value of them, and it's not about the number, it's about the connection and the interaction. And what you've got to realize is what's happening now is more and more companies are investing in podcasting. Media companies are spending a lot of money. We've seen a lot of jobs advertised. Surprisingly, nobody's offered us the jobs yet. Offering big money for people to come in as commissioning editors in charge of podcasts at all these radio and media groups. But the mindset, I believe, is fundamentally flawed in that they're coming over with the same, what we would call the bums on seats mentality, because that's how they make the money. They justify their existence is by having millions and millions of viewers and listeners. But what a podcast can do, and Jim says this. Jim's watching at the minute. This is Jim Salverson, who hosts and writes On the Left Side with me. He does the talking, and writes the jokes, and we had this conversation a while back in one of our blogs about is podcasting hampered by its language? And one of the things Jim suggested is that if you think of traditional media like TV, radio, cinema as broadcasting, and he says because you're able to go to a niche with a podcast, think of it as narrowcasting, like laser focus on a small audience, but intense and really powerful. And I think that's I'm not too sure about as a name catching on, but in terms of a mindset and how you think about what you're doing, I think it can be really powerful.
Absolutely, and I think it sort of it does go back to the fact of it does go back to the. Sorry, I completely lost my train of thought then. Like I said, not posting in this group. Can you just give me a minute? I'll just go back through.
This is what we call a senior moment, ladies and gentlemen. This is what happens when you don't get any sleep and have a puppy.
And keep podcasting all night and all day. Just a couple of hellos. Hello, Matthew. Mark, thanks for saying hello. Matthew, recently found your work. Good stuff all around. Thanks very much. That's really kind. So I was just thinking along the lines of that there should be some sort of Patreon set up for people that have to work with you. And then we could be like, oh, you could support me and Jim.
Maybe, yeah. That's something that a few people have talked about. We'll come and talk about that in the next couple of weeks, actually, Patreon. So what we try and do whenever we work about something, whenever we talk about something, we're not just reading a blog that somebody else has done and telling you as if we found it out. Very much the way we operate is we do it ourselves, and quite often that involves messing up a lot, making a lot of mistakes, having an argument, spending a load of money that we didn't need to spend, crying, getting emotional, having a hug, and then having this kind of session, which is almost like a therapy where we kind of go, you know, we did this, it was stupid, you might want to try a different technique. You know, so once we've got our head around Patreon and tried it out, then we'll talk about it. So generally, that's how we try to do. We talk from our experience, which, as I say time and time again, is just a fancy word for all our mistakes.
Which is a fancy word for swearing, I know. We also take a question from the PodTips community, so this is a point where we'll quickly talk about that. So PodTips community is our Facebook group that we do these lives for, and basically it's just a free place to go, chat with podcasters, speak about your problems that you're having, get some answers from us, from people in the community. And as we always say, people are there from all over the world. So even if you're having a meltdown at 3 o'clock in the morning, someone will actually be awake and be able to offer an answer.
Just this week, we've had people join from Australia, New Zealand, India, and Canada as well. So that's, you know, I think we pretty much have almost every time zone covered.
We should probably get a little map done or
is
something, find out where absolutely everyone is.
Yeah. The nice thing about it as well is just with the statistics that we get coming back from the group as well, is what sometimes happens with these Facebook groups, the more people go in, the actual level of interaction drops. But what we found is the groups got bigger, and actually the amount of people who are interacting is more and more as well. So that's whether they just simply liked something, or they're commenting, or they're getting involved. And what's great is you've got such a wealth of experience, and that's all we're doing. We're talking about our experience and what we've done, and the successes that we've had occasionally, and all the times things have gone wrong. And what's nice is everybody else has sort of bought into that and is sharing those things as well. So thank you very much for that. Please keep doing that, and don't be afraid to share.
That's a big question. We actually had a message last week, and this was a bit of a thing that made me think about the group, saying I'm going to have to leave the PodTips group because it's a bit high level for me. And I actually said to that post, I'm really sorry that you feel like that. It was just the fact that 2 or 3 posts around his were quite high level, and he felt like he was just like at school, you're asking that stupid question, but no question is too early on, is too stupid, because as even the fact that we've been doing this full-time 3 years now, but doing it for many years before, we're still the first question, some of the first blogs that we wrote about the microphone or the recording equipment or whatever, it changes every single week. So even if you ask that question that someone asked 100 times before, it's still a great question because it changes every week.
I would say, like, whatever you do in life, do not be afraid of looking stupid or trying to do a Facebook Live with a blender in the background.
What are you in, a shakeaway? So that leads on, in the PodTips group, we'd like to bring up one thing that's sort of been talked about a lot. And this week we've had a lot of questions, but also a lot of people that have been podcasting ages not knowing a huge amount about the fact that where your podcast should be, and that actually to get it, the answer is everywhere, but to get it everywhere is actually really easy with most podcast hosts. People have said, oh, I didn't know that you just click a button and it goes to pretty much everywhere, and that is the case.
Yeah, there's lots of different names for these as well. The one I like, my favourite word for that is podcatchers, which makes me think of those Native American dream catchers you get. You know, you put them next to your bed and it's like a spider's web and it's got feathers on and captures the bad dreams. So, I mean, I'm yet to have a review on one of my podcasts. When they've said it's like a bad dream. But
hang on,
please feel free. It was at 2 secs and 2 stars. So the really cool thing about that is it's just about time. And I think what you've got to look at when you're doing lots of things in life is not about how much, not just how much it costs, is what does it cost you in time, not in money. And you can do these things yourself. So there's a couple of podcasts, because again, it's one of the things we tried to do. We're like, we need to know how this works. So we had a couple of podcasts where we hosted ourselves. We did the coding. We did the coding. You did it. We had the website. We still ended up having to pay for the statistics. But then when you do that, right, that just has it in one place. And so if you want to do it everywhere, what was it? The last count we had, was it like 51 separate steps that you have to do to make sure that your podcast
is something like that? Yeah, if you try to get get it in absolutely every different thing, and if you are coding it yourself, it goes up to the 50s. But it doesn't have to be like that. It can be all taken care of in one place and go out to everything, which is what a couple of people have been so shocked to hear that we've spoken to this week. I think the big one is that you can actually just hit publish, and your podcasting host, if you're if you're on one of the ones that we're recommending and talking about especially, will actually even create it as a YouTube video. So they'll take the artwork and the audio and just plug it onto YouTube for you, which is quite revolutionary, really.
My go-to one at the moment is Libsyn, and what is on the way, because we've been using Libsyn for a while. I say we've become friends with them, but actually what I mean is we've complained so much about and asked so many questions. We've got like a direct line to the customer service team, and Rob's very good. And what I can tell you is that very shortly there'll be, if it works out the way they want it to, there'll effectively just be a tick box on Libsyn, which will turn your podcast into an Alexa skill, as easy as that, which is just when you look at how big voice interaction, voice gadgets have taken off again, just in a year, they've become a huge area of the market. Obviously, Samsung are about to launch something which is a bit of a game changer as well. Google and Amazon obviously sort of leading the way. Apple are kind of coming late to the game, and as always, costing more money. But it's very soon everywhere's going to have one of these. I'm still waiting for it to be fully fitted in my car so I can pretend I'm Michael Knight.
And there's a 80s reference for you there, ladies and gentlemen.
But just to have those kinds of things, like the amount of coding that it takes to organize this kind of thing on yourself, you can do it. And if you love the Raspberry Pi and you can do those things, I highly recommend going and doing it, and you'll learn a lot from it, and it's exciting. But for most people, it's 3 days of a headache.
And the rest,
so for things like this to come along, which could save you that work, it's a real game changer.
It really is, and they can be very easy. Just quickly, if you've got a question, we're coming to the end of our topic, so if you've got a question, please do drop it in the comments now, and we'll answer all your questions at the end. So please do drop some questions in, save us just staring at each other in awkward silence for a few minutes. Going back to the hosting things, what I did was I wrote a blog this week because we got so many questions, and it was just around, we talked about the two sort of hosts that we recommend, and that is Libsyn and podcast websites. But the idea of the blog was to just highlight the things that you should be thinking about when you're selecting these things. And I think that when we first start podcasting, one of the first things we're told to think about is where we're going to put it and how it's going to get on iTunes. And so we just go with a recommendation, and we don't necessarily know the questions we should be...
Apple Podcast.
Sorry, on Apple Podcast, not iTunes. We don't necessarily know what questions we should be asking or the things that we should be looking for. And so I sort of just listed out that most people go on cost, and I understand that there are implications. There's things that you need to save money on, and I get that. But when you're putting your blood, sweat, and tears into a podcast, then maybe cost isn't the most important thing. What if you can, just for the sake of a cup of coffee's money a month, for those people that can afford it, then just go for something that is based on these things, and that's how reliable the hosting is. You can easily go on podcasting communities and see people putting posts up, oh my goodness, my podcast is down. Is anyone else on this host? It's down, and you'll see people, their hosting has gone down. Look at how much space you're going to need. Think about the format of your podcast. Does it need to be stereo or mono? Can you save a few megabytes here and there, and how much space you're going to need? That will help you with the cost. The other thing is statistics. You need to have good statistics and then be in line with IAB, which I know we've covered quite a lot. If you don't know what IAB is, just drop us a comment here and we'll explain it. The support, I think, is massive. So having something with a good support network and good customer services is just fantastic. The ones that we do, I mean, as Ant said, we've hassled them enough and got so many questions and found out the support is excellent on those.
Yeah. In terms of the statistics, just from a point of view of if you're doing something purely as a labour of love, as a passion project, you're not doing it as a business. There's nothing you want to. You literally don't care how many people listen to it. Do you need to have this?
The only thing I think that it's nice to know is where the listens are coming from. So if you are trying to grow it, I mean, if it's just to update your family, then no, you don't need them at all. If you just want to be putting it in the places that the most people are listening it to, that's a nice statistic to have. But otherwise, it's not the most important thing. But
I do like the inference of what you said there. Is like, if you're doing it if it's just for your family, you don't need that to track where your family are, because I have other methods of tracking
We're
them.
not seeing this. I was baffled that I found out about Find My Friends on iPhone. Luckily, mine hasn't been on, but my family-in-law all have each other on Find My Friends, and they're like, "Oh, where's your sister today?" And she's like, "Hang on a minute." Goes on the app, it's like, "Oh, they're at Heathrow," and I'm like, "What? That's creepy, right? Is that creepy?" They're genuinely
Yeah.
tracking
What I find
people.
is that how the mentality has changed so much. And like 5 years ago, everyone was like, "God, no, I'm not doing that." And now everyone's going, "Oh yeah, isn't this
Yeah, I'm
cool?"
still not
And
doing
it's
it.
just
They'll know I'm in the pub when I'm meant to be working then. The final thing that was on that list is the distribution options that we started talking about. So hitting publish, I'm finding that it can go to everywhere. Spotify, TuneIn, which is really important for Alexa speakers, we covered a couple of weeks ago. Making sure it goes to Apple Podcasts, making sure it goes to Stitcher. It can even go to and create an account and create a post on SoundCloud, on YouTube, all these different places. Look at what it can do with one click of a button. And then being everywhere becomes such an easier task. And you're not leaving those barriers up for
yeah,
entry for people that go, "Oh, is your podcast on Spotify? Because I listen to music on there." "Oh, no, but you can download this app and then search for this and then click subscribe and then you'll be able to listen." That friend is going to go, "Nah, you're all right." Or they'll probably go, "Oh, yeah, that sounds good." I'm not doing that. And so just make sure it's everywhere. And if you have a good podcast host that can do that easily
yeah.
for you, then happy days.
And the thing is that I mean, literally, we could rattle off about 15 right now, but there's always other ones coming
Yeah.
along. My advice to you would be, before you look into it yourself, but also ask around. Ask in our group, ask in other groups, and you'll have the same names come up time and time again, and the same experiences from people. And that's what you really want. What's the actual experience like of doing it? Do people feel like they're getting value for their money as well?
Absolutely.
Because it is, and after all, like, although it can be done cheaply, literally just with your iPhone, I know most of the people in here are putting a lot of time and effort into this. Not just, they're buying equipment, they're spending hours learning new skills and organising logistics and putting it together. And so it's worth taking an extra half hour just to ask some questions and find out the right things about this.
Absolutely. Okay, well, that kind of wraps that bit up. Like I said, if you do have any questions at all, put them in the comments now. We will get to them in just a second. We'll
Hi,
answer
Angela.
absolutely everything. Yeah, hi. A couple of people. We'll do a little bit of a roll call in a minute. But I'm going to put you on the spot. What was your favourite post in PodTips this week, Mr. McGinley?
You said that now, just as my laptop crashed in the background. What's my favourite post? I did notice that when I said last week my favourite post was Alex podcasting in his pyjamas. He tried to seduce me with another picture of his sexy looking microphone. And actually, you know what? It's really cheap of me to say this, like the same person twice a week. But what I really liked about that wasn't that it was Alex. But he's made a microphone stand out of a lamp stand. And we've seen this a couple of times. But when you look at it, actually, those angled arm poise lamps, it's the same
It
thing
looks, yeah, very much the same
as a
as
microphone
this,
stand.
doesn't it? It's very similar.
Yes. Except the thing is, it's like, you'll pay 50 quid for that, and you can buy a lamp with everything in for a tenner. So it's just a little bit of adjustment at the end. And what I like about that was, like, we also had the photo last week of, I can't remember who it was now, but he tried to soundproof his recording area just by getting the cushions off his couch.
Yeah.
And his sofa, and just do that. And it's the fact that, if every single one of us shared an image of our setup and how we record, it's all going to be different. It's all going to be different. And the same with that, all our podcasts are going to be different as well. And it just emphasizes the point: there's no right way, there's no wrong way to do this. Just do it, and you'll learn. And there'll be things that you learn, things that we talk about, that work for 90% of the people. But if you're on that 10%, it's all right. Do something else, find something that works for you. And if it works really well, share it. And that's what it's about.
And that's what Alex did with that stand. I love that. I mean, the stand cost him £5, and then and it looks quite a sexy microphone now with the big old, is it like a yellow snowball or something on the top? And there was another person in the group.
Yeah,
Sorry,
Yeti.
is it a Yeti?
Yeah.
There's another person in the group who just got a load of.
No, it's not. It's a blue.
Do you want to make up your mind? Um,
I have no idea
There
what
was
that
another
is.
person in the group that just got a load of old acoustic foam and a hot glue gun and sort of made a fort out of old acoustic foam. And it was just this big old, and I'm sure they won't mind me saying it was this big old mess of acoustic foam with all of his gear inside. But it probably worked amazingly, probably better than some recording studios. So I think that was probably my favourite post of this week as well. Got a couple. Go
So
on.
Justin's just asked us, yeah, when interviewing, what is the best way to ensure that the quality at their end is good enough? Well, I say the first thing is to make sure that one of the people isn't in a cafe that's got loads of people.
Hasn't got Paul McCartney walking behind. And you'll find that about halfway through the video.
Yeah.
It's about two things really. One is making sure that you've got the piece of software or whatever it is to be able to record them well. And the other bit, which is always forgotten about, everyone talks about, like we did, recording on Zoom, using Zencast or recording with Ecamm, but actually is actually educating the person that you're about to interview. And you might get a celebrity or a star. Don't be worried about going to them. Look, have you got a headset? Have you got somewhere quiet? Can you not be in a great hall or a church that's going to echo loads? And these is what I'm going to do. And I think also there's a couple of things you can just say before a podcast that make it really simple in that you say, oh, if I don't go and keep responding to your answer, it's not because I'm bored, I'm not being rude, it's just I'm letting you speak and getting a good quality recording in the interview. So it's about educating the guests you're going to have as much as it is, and maybe I should have done that for you. It's about educating the guest and having the good quality recording stuff or software. And if you go back to if I don't know, it was Justin was on right at the beginning, but we were talking about Zoom and there's a free option. It's really good. So if you go back to the beginning of the video, you'll see us talking about that. It's a good option.
Yeah.
That's
I think, as I say, just having a backup as well. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, and we talked about that a
Yeah,
bit on.
thanks, Mark.
Mark's, yeah, a little bit. Sorry about the background noise on Ant's end. Next week we're going to put him in an anabolic chamber so that we know nothing can be heard.
We did this purely to emphasise the point that we were making in answering Justin's question.
I smell BS, but okay. So just a bit of a roll call then. Thanks, guys. Justin says, thanks. You use Audacity with Skype but may look at Zoom. Fantastic. Thanks, Mark. Natalie, who's joined. Angela, hey. Woody, Dylan, Rebecca, Mark Burford, Tony Churnside, Matthew Moore, Mark Orr, Ed Lawrence, Peter Cherrick, Emma Morton Turner, Eric A. Sartori, sorry if I'm murdering your surname, Danny Nagus, Mel Bridger, Linda Smith, Marcus Fine, Daniel Derrick, Robert Giroux, Gobind Rayat, Dan Roberts, Jim Salverson, Kalol, Nej, Georgie, Raphael, Sean. If I haven't shouted you out, I'm so sorry. The list goes on. And we know he's going to watch it later. So shout out to John Mooney as well.
Okay, and that's actually more people than were at your wedding, and more people that I like as well.
Well, yeah, but you can't have them all, can you? Like I got told I had to invite you, so you can't. Some battles you will just lose. We're going to leave it there because everyone in the background of you decided to shout all at once, and I'm sure there's going to be more blending of drinks.
Yeah, we've got what's the next episode on PodTips about, which is out
the one that I edited for 2 hours yesterday and then lost. I'm not going to answer that question because I may change what episode it is over the weekend, but do tune into that on Tuesday. Make sure you subscribe to the PodTips podcast, and it will be posted in the PodTips community anyway. So if you search for PodTips on Facebook or go to podtips.net, that's where all these wonderful people have come from and all the questions have come from as well. So we'll be back next Friday. Are you going to be in a cafe or are you going to be somewhere quieter?
No, I'll be. But as I say, this was really quiet. You might just be able to hear the bird song above, and that was the only noise that was in. And literally, as we went live, like a busload of people just turned up, and on the way to a football match or something. I don't know what happened, but yes, thank you. I think what I'll do is I'll just get one of those big goldfish bowls.
Next week, Ant will be turning up in a space helmet. That's it. Right, so thanks everyone for tuning in. I hope we've been able to help, and we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye. Hey, Nick, just in time.